Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today, everybody who's online and everybody who's in person. Today, we're having a little discussion here at the LeMay Museum on the topic of the digital world and the print world and how that's affected our passion for cars. Does it help? Does it hurt? This is all part of a talk track that we do once a month called If Alfas Could Talk. So you can get a hint. Most of my conversation today is going to be on, well, the digital world and things, but in the print world, but it's going to focus around Alfa Romeos. Now, Alfa Romeos is a great topic for this because Alfa Romeo started many years ago, and half of its life, it was before there was any kind of digital media. So almost half of its life is recorded in print. So some of that has been brought into the digital world by being scanned or updated or added. People have written it. But that's part of that transition from print to digital. So is that all good? Is that bad? That's the kind of thing we'll be just chatting about today. How do we receive our information? How do we find research stuff? It's as simple as if you want to work on your car, how many of us, quick show of hands, go to DIY videos to say, hey, how do I change the battery in my car? Well, the answer is, hey, it could be simple. You could probably have figured it out, but it's so much faster to go online. So there's benefits to digital world, but there's also drawbacks to it. There's a lot of errors out there in this world. So the question today was, we'll talk about these transitions, these changes, as to whether they're beneficial or whether they're hard for us. The ultimate answer when we get done with this is that we're not going to change any of it. we are just going along with the flow and enjoying it for what it's good and what's bad. But the nice thing is that the Alfa Romeo world is a wonderful space to explore this topic in. People here that are in person will have a microphone that we'll wander around with, and we'll be able to ask you questions or let you jump in. So raise a hand if you have a question at the time. People that are online, you guys are more than welcome to go into chat and send a message, and we will try to jump on it as quick as we can and try to respond to it. So I want to just kind of touch base on this whole world. When you think about the fact that about 580 years ago, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, it transitioned so much from the handwritten records that were being kept to a mechanical produced record. Suddenly, libraries and archives basically got filled up. There's so much historical records that go back 500 years, but not that much go before that. And it's because, well, the printing press was invented and we were able to produce a whole lot more. That same kind of transition has happened over the last 10 or 12 years with the amount of digital information that has come available to all of us, whether it's on Facebook, social media sites when you're looking at things, whether it's watching it online on a show that you can see on TV or on your computer. There is all sorts of digital transition that we're going through. So like I mentioned, the DIY videos are popular. Could be reference books. It could be historical things. Somebody asks you about a Lancia, an old rare Lancia or something. We know about Alfas. For God's sakes, we all know what every Alfa is. But if they ask you about a Lancia, what do? You grab your phone and you do a quick search and you show it to them. You know exactly what to use the digital world for. These are wonderful perks, but there's drawbacks to it too. So today we'll chat about that. So today I have a couple of guests with me. Sitting on one side of me, we have Keith Martin. He's a car fanatic expert, publisher since 1988 of the Alfa Romeo Market Letter and now the Sports Car Market Magazine. We also have Alex Sargent, who is seriously committed to the print world. This guy is opening up a bookstore that's car-focused books. I love that. I absolutely love that. So thank you very much for being mildly insane. We love that about you. We always have, but now even more. So thank you very much. Thank you, Keith, for being here today. So yay, nice. We have support for these people. I know everybody online is trying to find where's the clap button on chat, but it's there. So for my sake in this, I've just been a lifelong Alfa Romeo freak, but I also happen to have a 30-something year career in the printing industry. And from the very beginning of that career, I was told this industry is going away. computers will replace you one day. Well, I'm still waiting for them to replace me. Luckily, I've retired from that industry, but I'm a very passionate print person. So I just wanted to set the foundation for our talk today. Make sure you see who everybody is. And again, thank you everybody for being here. So Keith, I want to start with you. When you first started publishing your material, the IBM PC was in its infant, stages. The Apple Macintosh was in stores. You could go to Radio Shack and buy a TRS-80. These were awesome little computers that were changing. We didn't know what they were going to really do for our world. At that point, you started a car magazine. Want to talk to us about your magazine and what the thought is and what got you going?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for having me here. I want to thank Chris and Elizabeth here for being my chauffeurs and bringing me up I come from this faraway town to the south.
You traveled.
Yeah, and it's known for having no sales tax.
Sales tax. Let me look that up.
But it's a treat to be here. I've been on the board of LeMay since it opened. And so it's been great to see the enthusiasm and how the LeMay has integrated itself into the community. Yep. The magazine, the Alpha Market Letter was started because there was a Porsche market letter, there was a Ferrari market letter, there was a Maserati market letter, and there was no Alpha market letter. And I was afraid somebody else would do one and it would be really crappy and I would get angry every time I read it. So I thought I better do one myself. And we did it on a mimeograph machine. And I did the photography, I did the writing, I did the layout, I did the paste ups, I did the whole 9 yards. And PageMaker, or whatever the version of PageMaker was, the first layout programs were just becoming available. Yeah. And I would go, my printer, I'd watch him lay out the stuff and typeset it and paste it up. And I thought, we can do that ourselves. So we started doing the magazine in-house with the typesetting and all of that, because that's the way we can save money to do it.
You took on all the chores.
Well, it was, and I had printing presses, and I also had binderies and all that stuff. So
you got away from the mimeograph hopefully pretty quickly because your fingers turned purple using that.
That's right. So, that's right. Yeah. We put an ad in Hemmings magazine saying, subscribe to the Alfa Romeo Market Letter, $33, and we got about 50 orders.
Is that ad still running in Hemmings?
I think so. Actually, what's happened is Hemmings has now become one of our biggest advertisers.
Oh, nice.
It only took 35 years. But once we got the 40 orders, I thought, geez, I got to do something here. So we to get the classifieds into the market letter, I contacted people in every major city in the US, and I paid them to clip out the Alfa Romeo classified ads from their newspapers and mail them to us. And so we would have like 100 Alfas for sale.
Yeah. That's clever idea.
Yeah. Became more a part of it as we evolved, but really it was just, I really liked Alfas, and I wanted to have Gerald Rausch was my role model at the Ferrari market letter. Yeah. When we first did this, we required serial numbers in all our classifieds because Gerald did for the Ferrari market letter.
Helps to track the cars. And
but nobody cared enough to. But it's really just been an active passion. I've had Alfas since I was 16 years old, and I feel lucky that I've actually gotten to live my life out messing around with these old cars and getting paid to do it.
Exactly. It's not easy to do what you love, but somebody has to do it. You might as well do it. I know I do. So now the computer did not just help you. You could then start using it for communication or for setup, but as time went on, I'm sure it helped with all sorts of aspects, the photographs and other things.
I think, let me answer that slightly differently, that what we have to look at is magazines are a form of transmittal of information.
Right.
And really what we're talking about is sharing information. The internet is another way to share information. It has pluses and minuses, just like print has pluses and minuses. So what we've watched happen is, first, when the internet came, they said all magazines would go out of business.
Yeah.
Apple couldn't sell magazines on its newsstand. most magazines went out of business. But the reason they went out of business, and I'm going to go into the weeds a little bit here, but most magazines, especially large ones, were what I call rate-based magazines, where I would say to you, I'll guarantee that your ad will be seen by 1 million people. And then I would give the magazines away at $5 a year, like Car and Driver, $10 a year, whatever it is, and then charge you an ad rate based on seeing those 1 million people. Well, what happened when the internet came is that people were able to get their information without going to the magazine. And then they lost their advertisers and they weren't charging enough to pay for the magazines. And so the magazines folded like Newsweek, gone. To survive today in the print world, you have to have a point of view and you have to give people an experience that they can't get a different way. You get a different experience when you open up something that's printed than you do when you get it digitally.
It's a tangible item. It's the weight of the paper, weirdos like me, it's the smell of the ink. I mean, all that stuff is part of it. And you look at it all, you look at it, whether it's glossy, does it have spot varnish, all these little things that you don't get that on a flat screen.
Well, the other thing that people have told us is that when the magazine comes, they take it and they wait for their special time to read it.
They got to go to the bathroom?
That's where our main newsstand sales
I thought it was the only one.
But whether they take it with them on a plane to read but it's not something they sit down, open the magazine, pour a scotch, do something, but it's a ritual of how they allow us to share this information with them.
That is, it's funny, but they've done online research about print matter like that, magazines, and they do say it's the visceral senses that are being helped with the holding of a document. You're holding sports car market in your hand, the feel of that thing, the smell of it, the look of it, but also the fact, like you say, you sit down, you become connected to it. You're not interrupted by the Microsoft telling you need to update your software.
The other thing is that all print things exist to curate stuff, to choose what we're going to pick out to share with you. There's the US News Today and the New York Times have the same news base to work from. Mm-hmm. What you're paying the Times for is their editors, their opinion, their op-ed. So what you're paying us to do is to take all the stuff that's happened in 1 month and for us to pick out the stuff that we think matters the most and then to give you our informed opinion. So instead of doing a Google search, which said Alfas that sold this month, and you get 400 pages, we'll say, here are 3 that caught our attention, but you're paying us to curate and pre-select the information.
The ones that make a difference, the noteworthy ones that make a difference, one way or another. Sets an example perhaps for how the S4 spiders are selling at this point.
Going up fast, I hope.
There you go.
Especially the ones with automatics.
The red ones.
We just watched that an Alfaholics GTV sell, was it for 140,000 last week? Which to me is, I'm skipping again here, but I'm not real thrilled by that because to me that's an outlaw, as opposed to a pure machine.
Yeah.
And I don't. It's almost like a Singer iteration of. But nonetheless, it's 140,000. That's the price that people are getting for 67 911s.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It's impressive. It's impressive.
Yeah.
But that's what it costs to make it.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did.
So your readership over the years had to also change as time went along. Can you talk to how perhaps your readers have changed or how you deliver the information to the readers?
Well, the font size has gotten a little bigger. We had to do a major restructuring when COVID came,
right? Because
the car shows and auctions were all canceled. And so we had to stop and rethink the magazine and say, how do we still stay vital, even though we don't have the same kinds of things to report on?
Yeah.
We've always been a short form magazine. My idea of a long article is 900 words.
Yeah.
But I believe that also fits in with our reading habits now. In the magazine itself, it's designed to have many points of entry. You can almost open any page and drop right in and start reading. we have shifted and we're doing more cars from Japan, Japanese domestic market cars. We're doing shorter takes on cars. Like we were mentioning, like if we were doing an Alpha 8C, we might do 500 words is really all you need, because you already know what an 8C is and you know a lot about the history, and you can grab this book if you need to know more. And what we want to tell you is that one just sold for 17.5 million, and it sold 3 years before this for 12 million. Here's the difference. And that's all we want to do, is give you that nugget and then get the hell out of Dodge.
Right.
You know?
Yep. And to me, I do think if a person wants to know more about 8Cs, then they can turn to maybe a previous article that has a little more deep, or there's other tools for them. They can even go online and look it up if they truly choose to.
That's right.
So that's, to me, I think that is exactly right on the market to do that. Makes sense for the way we function in both the print and digital world. What about news, though? When you're trying to share news to people, when you try to get it into a magazine, your magazine is got a delay to be published.
Yeah, delay is a kind word. It was probably a decade ago when I realized that we would never again have breaking news in the magazine, because magazines are just, even though ours is fast turnaround, it's still slow. Yeah. So that's when I created our weekly newsletter. And our weekly newsletter, which is electronic, goes out to about 25,000 people. And it has a summary of the previous week's activities, auction results, but just a summary.
Just a touch.
Here are the list of cars that RM saw that we sold yesterday. And that lets you know that we're aware of what's happening in the market. And then that sets you up to wait for your 4 to 6 weeks until you get the magazine that has a more detailed analysis. But we've had to do both. We've had to come at it digitally for the quick stuff, and then the magazines exist because of op-ed, which you're not paying for news. What you're paying for is our writers' opinions, like Thor Thorson.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when he writes about an Elva, he really knows, and you can read it and enjoy it and feel like you're coming away with accurate information and learn something.
Yep, that makes sense. I like it. I like it. So this is not just magazines. I mean, this is also involves print books, because books, there's countless books that have been produced over the years. Lord knows any of us who have Alfa Romeo libraries are filled with all sorts of great books. The problem is it's hard for a computer to replace all the content that's in this book. So hiding over here on my left is Alex, who, you've just recently opened up a bookstore, Ethel's Garage, or you're working on still opening up that. Actually, it's a big process. Yeah. Clearly, you have a passion for books and cars, and you're combining them in this. So is your bookstore going to be focusing on just new books, old books? What are we aiming for?
Well, thanks for inviting me, Fred, and thank you all for coming. Ethel's Garage, spelled with a Y, so you don't get confused. Ethel's Garage is in Mill Creek, and we are putting together a bookstore that probably eventually is going to wind up having 25% new titles and 75% out of print titles. Uh-huh. And we're arriving in the industry at an opportunity that was created by COVID. Previously, most of the sellers of out-of-print books in the automotive realm worked the car show and swap meet circuits. And we're out there taking a van full of books, setting up a table, selling off of that. Well, that completely disappeared with COVID. Turns out a lot of those were old guys who decided to retire. And so we've been buying up inventory from these folks who are retiring and slowing down, and have come up with the idea of combining it into a large, modern, easily accessible collection that can be accessed from anywhere in the world, and you can order from us. I did not expect, when I decided to open a bookstore, that the first thing I would have to do is assemble a software team. And so we have developers who 2 weeks from now are probably going to give me the first version of what we'll be working with. And we'll be testing that out and seeing where it fails, where it works really good, where we need to extend it. So we can create a catalog. Because right now I have a warehouse with 99,000 pounds of books in it. They arrived on 3 semis on 57 pallets and 1,850 boxes. Wow. So it's a lot of books. And there's pictures of it on our Facebook page at Ethel's Garage. Also, a couple of videos on my YouTube channel at Ethel's Garage. Social media is going to be a very important part of selling books now and continuing into the future. And those are the first two channels we're starting, but we'll be eventually adding all of the social media channels and a newsletter, of course, that will go out. Specialized newsletters going out to people with different interests, because we'll have a much broader clientele than just Alpha people or just Ferrari people or.
Are there people other than Alpha people?
Yeah, there's Ford people and Chevy people and Mopar people.
Gotta write that down.
Not very many Lamborghini people.
Jeez. Yeah, there's 3 Lamborghini people, I think.
Well, they apparently don't read as much as the Ferrari.
Oh, that's fun.
So Alex,
Pick that up on the mic.
Amazon has really set the standard for ease of shop and ship and so forth. Is that a bar that you have to achieve as well, so people can shop as easily with you as they do with Amazon?
Well, the interesting thing about Amazon is they started out as a bookstore.
Yeah.
But now they're not. And so there's a market for niche bookstores, because when something gets as big as Amazon, it's harder to find exactly the right thing if you're looking in a very specific area. And so we have to provide a user experience that's as friendly and as quick as Amazon, but is more tailored to a specialist marketplace for us. And that's what we're doing. We're looking at what they do. We're looking at what other people do. We're the first, we think, to apply an industry level or enterprise level ERP system, enterprise resource planning system, to a bookstore. Previously, bookstores have usually started small and then come up to be on the web, rather than starting out with that's their main goal. We expect to sell, once we're up and running, 300 or more books a day, every day, because on the internet you're open all the time. What's great about books is, while periodicals are a data transfer medium, books are a data storage medium. They are the most perfect data storage medium devised. The second most durable one ever devised. The most durable one is clay tablets. And for great stuff on clay tablets, look up Irving Finkel on YouTube. He's from the British Museum.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
But books as a data storage medium are perfect. We've had 600 years to perfect them. And the reality of it is, when you're talking about working on cars and information about cars, working on a car with a PDF of a shop manual on your phone is not optimal. I find that even professional mechanics who have a nice big monitor on their workstation at work, when they get home, they don't have a computer at home to work on cars. They're buying books. They're using those because they fit in their garage. They fit in their neighbor's garage or their brother's garage when they go fix his car. All things that have not been moved to digital. The Kindle was introduced 14 years ago. At that time, everybody thought that that was the end of print media. It's gone. It's all going to be on a tablet from the future. There are more new titles being published today than there were when the Kindle was introduced. And one of the things that happened is digital technology has improved the publishing process and made it much more efficient. It's possible to print on demand a book once you've completed the book and have the digital files. You just have a printing service output the book when you actually sell a copy. So you don't have to buy 10,000 of them from Singapore or wherever the cheaper printers are all at once up front, and have, for the small author, having a garage full of them that you sell one by one. So that's made things very different. There's a number of publishers now who specialize in the automotive area in print on demand, and we'll be representing them in our bookstore. The ability to publish just a lower volume specialty book is possible now, because you can do all of your prep work. All of your pre-press is just simple digital files until you need to output it. Printing languages have become standardized, and so you can send those book files any place in the world that has the best exchange rate and have the books printed if you want to need a batch of them printed. On the other side, if you're doing small, very efficient printing, you can make money off of relatively low-end books. There's a gentleman named Don Norris. I don't know if you've seen his books. New Schenectady Press, I think, is what he calls his publications. But he makes these little tiny, little 5x7 pamphlet-sized books. I think they're 64 or 68 pages thick. And he'll just churn them out on an interesting topic that he finds. He did one on Chrysler interiors. He's done them on things like Cushman's and Crosley's and other defunct manufacturers that didn't make a lot of different books. He just came out with a book on American Gullwing cars. Who knew there were so many of them? But anyway, he publishes through a third-party print house called Lulu Press, and they print on demand. And he's able to sell his books in the under $25 range and make money as an author.
Now, as the industry has changed and digital has become a piece of the printing process, not just in the setup, but actually the printing. Yes, digital on-demand printing or self-publishing has become a cool thing. So yeah, we have more books, but there's also the downside, which is accuracy. Now, you don't have that huge pool of editors or researchers that are validating everything you put in there. When you would write a book, you'd have to validate so much content, make sure it was absolutely correct before you published it, because once published, it's not easy to change. So it's in somebody's bookshelf. You can't fix that page 13. So you're self-publishing and doing if Lulu Press can produce those cute little books, what's the editing process or validation process? How accurate are those?
Well, for things like that, it's the reputation of the author. And he's churned out books for so long and has, he wrote for Tad Burns, I think, way back. And, remember that name?
I don't.
Tad Burns' auto album? Way back. But anyway, so there are publishing houses that take the chore of doing the validation of the quality of the book because they're standing behind it with their reputation. In the United States, Dalton Watson Fine Publishers, which is publishing this book, which Jay wrote, is an example of a house that is only publishing at the high end of the market, although the high end of the market is no longer limited editions that are $500,000, $750,000. Those books now are in the affordable range, the 300 and down range. There's, in the terms of Alpha, there's Dingwart Verlag out of Germany and Patrick Dosley's books. He's published a whole series. You may be familiar with them. They're the ones with the gray covers with the kind of cream colored stripes on them. They make a really nice set on shelf. We'll be carrying those. But they only are publishing books that are done by people who are already recognized as experts. There's Giorgio Nada out of Italy, also publishing books by recognized experts.
I happen to have one of those books of his right there. Yay!
And so these are all companies that are publishing stuff now. A little further down, there are people reprinting. They've got the rights to older publications, older catalogs, and are reprinting those. Veloce Press is an example of that. They're publishing third-party service manuals for BSA motorcycles, Norton motorcycles, Ariel, Triumphs, Alfa Romeo cars, Fiats, Opels, things you can't find anymore, or harder to find if you're just looking for the used book, but are now available because it's less expensive to reproduce these now than it used to be. Used to have to retypeset everything.
Yeah.
Now you can do it electronic imaging, create new publishing files, and you can print these books in small batch.
Alex, let me ask, do you think people are willing to spend more for books now than they were in the past?
There's still price competition and pressure, but there certainly seems to be a larger market for the fine book, the $250 to $400 book, than there was even 15 years ago. And I'm not sure what, it may just be software money, that's driven that. But there is more of a market there than there was when it used to be a publisher would make a fine book and print 500 numbered copies of it, and then put them out there for $500, $750 a piece. And it might take 7 or 8 years to sell out that series.
Right.
Now, that book coming out, publishing an initial run of, say, 2,500 copies at $250, that book is going to sell out in 2 years and go to a second edition if there's enough demand for it. We'll be carrying those kind of books. We'll be carrying a lot of service manuals. Because one of the things that I started talking about was, as a data storage medium, nobody's gone beyond what the service manual can do for the skilled mechanic and for the average person. That book there that you can get fingerprints on just works so much better than any of the electronic media that are currently available today. And there's actually a demand and increase. One of the phenomenon, which probably will be as incomprehensible to the rest of you as it was to me, is that younger folks, Xers and millennials, are buying cars that we would have thought of as not really enthusiast cars, cars that are of no interest. K cars, Ford Fairmounts, weird stuff, right? Ford Focus, weird things. They're buying these cars, they're fixing them up, they're taking them to Radwood meets and to coffee shops and cars and coffees and things. And the service industry hasn't adjusted to want to work on those cars again yet. So those people are a prime market for us for service manuals. Service manuals that all the car dealerships threw out 10 years ago. And these old guys picked up. And we've bought them from them to combine together into our collection. And I've talked to a couple of people who bought these cars, who have these kind of cars. And it turns out that if you grew up with driver aids your entire life and have never driven a car where you're completely in control, it's an eye-opening experience for them. Driving an analog car, even if it's a K car, is more interesting to them than their BMW or their Audi Sport Utility or any of the modern things that they're driving around in.
That makes them like the car that much more. It's a better, more visceral experience.
Yes, yes.
Just like holding a book in your hands, more visceral than looking at it on the screen.
And I picked up on this about a year ago when I started seeing mentions of these when these cars started selling on Bring a Trailer. And then Haggerty started having them show up in their statistics and their quotes. And we rely actually a lot on Haggerty's statistics to figure out where the market's going and what we need to be stocking in the future.
The challenge I have is that when if my Alfa Romeo passion is deep, if I want to do research on an Alfa Romeo, like sitting upstairs is the Alfa Romeo SZ from 1991, very rare car, limited production. It was a big splash when it first came out, but soon, the news of it kind of faded away, and you can't find a huge amount of information on the car. So where do you go to get that detail? And when I go to online websites, they don't provide that info. I mean, instead, they give you whatever splashy info they had, and if it's correct, that's great. If it's incorrect, well, guess what? That next website is going to have a little different branding to it, but it's going to have the exact same data, and it's going to be just as correct or incorrect. And when I worked at Microsoft, having to do research on cars, whether it's a K car, whether it's a 3-year-old car, whatever, you'd find a lot of websites out there, but they'd all be just as incorrect as the next one.
Yes.
And they'd say a car has a 4-speed transmission because they thought it did, but it might have had a 3-speed transmission in 1930, whatever that was. And so I find a simple error as obvious as the Alpha P3 that's in a collection here locally that won the what was that, 35 German Grand Prix? I think that's what it was. 1935 German Grand Prix. And people will say, oh, that had a 3.8 liter engine in it. And that's one of the reasons it won that race. Well, there is absolutely no physical way it can have a 3.8. And if you go to the Wikipedia page, there's this great resource of Wikipedia, gives you instantaneous info. And it says it has a 3.8 liter engine, and that's not correct. It was 3.2 liter. And if anybody dug deep enough into their Alfa Romeo books, they would find that the engine that was being used at that time could never have expanded to 3.8. There was no way to stroke it or bore it to get to 3.8. It would just have vaporized before it got there. So Okay, now we know it's not true, but it's still all over the place. I find it. About half the searches I go to say it's a 3.2 and half of them say it's a 3.8. So that's the thing that drives me nuts. Whereas if you go to a book, the book doesn't get erroneous information thrown into it. Now, I'm not saying all books are correct. There's the Fusi book that is like the Bible for Alfa Romeos, about the size of this Enzo book, and has every kind of data point you can imagine. The problem is, it also has inaccuracies because, hey, it's basing it on Italian records. And Italian records are only as accurate as Italian records. So the point is that I'm not saying books are perfect, but I find books to be much more consistently correct. Not perfect, but more consistent.
Books have a deeper editorial trail.
They do. And they also sometimes were written using a totally different methodology. Nowadays, we're into speed. We're trying to get things done in a hurry, efficiently. Computer pulls this stuff in. We sometimes copy and paste info. And that's what I find in all those car websites that have the wrong info, is that Tommy put up this little information of his spec on this car, and Sally stole it and put it on hers. Then Mike stole it and put it on his, and it just kept going. Well, it's because it's easy and quick. But this wasn't easy and quick, nor was any of these books. So speaking of books, and people had to invest in it, we have sitting in the audience today, we have Jay Gelati, who actually just got done putting together a book. And not only did he write the entire book, he compiled everything, he submitted it to his publisher and miraculously got published on his first attempt. Nicely done. But they didn't even have to do all that many changes or edits to it. So the trick is that it is possible to produce a book. But Jay, do you want to share? We'd have to get a mic to you. Nora, can we steal a mic from the back? Absolutely. Yay, Nora. There's that mic. Thank you. So why don't you tell us about the process that you went through for producing your cool book that we're remind people of, the Gold 917 book.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a fan, first of all.
That helps.
So, people ask me, well, how long did it take to write the book? And I say, well, really, it took 40 years.
Yeah.
I started when I was in high school, collecting the information. My copy of John Wyer's book, The Certain Sound, I bought when I was a freshman in college, right around the time when it first came out. So I've been collecting all this information and learning it for, at least 35 years before I sat down to write the book.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of it in my head. I had an angle. I was very fortunate also to have a relationship with one of the key figures, John Horseman, who was the chief engineer for the JW Automotive Engineering team. So I was able to bring something fresh that hadn't been done before. The challenge with the 917 is more books have been written on the 917 than any other Porsche racing car. So you've got to bring something fresh. And so one of the things I brought fresh was John Horseman's documentation, which had not previously been published. So some of the information in my book, the experts already know it all, but I even gave them something that, they didn't have before, which is the race data sheets and some of his other documents. And that's what I think print can do now, or print almost has to do, especially at a certain price point and above. You've got to bring something really fresh that people haven't seen before, and that is going to be a reference for the future.
Now, when you were putting this together and compiling this info, you had access to it. You had a choice in the road to turn left or turn right. Do I just take and post this to the internet, create a fantastic informational website, and just, boy, I could put all that information in there? Or I could devote a whole lot more time and I could actually put it into a book and then go out and hand sell each one of those books. I mean, that was a pretty important intersection. So how did you make that choice?
I don't know. I just like books, for one thing. I like print. I like the experience of sitting with, like with Keith's magazine. I'm the same way. I sit on the couch and it's a bit of a ritual to go through and read it. So
That's after the bathroom, right?
yeah, I sit on my couch.
Some people have a different order.
Yeah.
I sit on my couch, but I naturally gravitated toward a book because I wanted it to be something that would be part of the permanent record going forward. And I thought my audience also would appreciate something print versus digital. And maybe too, part of it could be I didn't know better. I mean, I just thought, well, this is what you're supposed to do. So,
Well, and your book is very, I mean, you have a lot of deep depth, whether it's the race, the engineering, the design. And you just wondered how many people would sit at a computer screen, whether it's a iPad or whether it's a nice flat screen, and actually read that far. That I just can't picture them going
no,
that deep.
no, I can't either. And that, again, that's the thing. I think where books are going to have the edge over digital is when you're going very deep. Another example would be in the Porsche world is our friend Ryan Snodgrass with his books on the 2.7 MFI and the 3-liter turbo cars, with extensive and detailed research, super deep on an extremely narrow segment.
For all you alpha people, these are Porsche things, and yeah, we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That's crazy, but we're talking about it.
But it's the same. It's the same thing. What I see in book publishing, for the most part, is almost no one publishes a generic book about Alpha or Ferrari. You've got to go narrow and deep for the most part. You've got to. I mean, we see a lot of books now being published on one single car. Porter Press in the UK, has a whole series of books where the entire book is about one single car. In my case, my book is about 16 individual chassis, so it's similar in that respect.
Yep. No, that's very, very true. To me, I think it's an amazing opportunity that you had to, take all that information and be able to put it out in a media that's going to get used. So you then combined it, the publisher published it, now it's being sold. How receptive has the audience been to your book? Have you sold any?
Yeah, we've done pretty well. I mean, you always hope for more and you hope for better, but and my book's been available now for more than 3 years, so we're pretty far into the cycle now. And I think my publisher's pretty happy with it. We only have about 200 copies left out of an initial run of 1,500 plus 200 special publisher's editions that we did roughly. So I think my publisher's pretty happy. I would have liked to have had it sell out faster, and but everybody seems to be pretty happy with it, and
Very,
I'm happy
very cool.
with it as well.
Fred, I'd like to say, listening to you talk about your 40 years of experience, what we look for in our writers are people that have tribal knowledge. We don't want any Wikipedia writers for us who look up a car on Wikipedia and then write a story.
Oh, they know everything they need to know.
Well, because it's the same Wikipedia article, as you said, it's been bounced from place to place to place. So we look for specialists, we edit them heavily, and then everything we have is behind a paywall. So you can't get to our information unless you're a paid subscriber. And we've been very careful about that, because once you start giving stuff away, you're letting people know exactly how much you value it. It's worth nothing.
Yeah.
So we very carefully curate who does the writing, who does the editing, and then we never give it away.
I love that. I love that. The York challenge, you went through a publisher, but clearly there are people that can do self-publishing. I have one of the little books sitting up here is a funny little book, A Journal and Other Musings of an Old Curmudgeon by a local guy named Rex Rice. He was a Fiat guy, and he produced this little book as a print-on-demand book. Now, what I like about the digital world is that this book would never have been published before the digital world happened, because there's nobody out there that would say, I'm going to run how many? No, I'm not going to run 3. I'm not going to run 20. No, if he couldn't find a market for a large number of these, it wouldn't happen. But this guy took the time to write his book. It's just his fun stories about all the Fiats he's owned and the adventures he's had. It was his passion. And I love that this became a book. Yes, there's no editing involved. Yeah, there's some goofy stories. Some are better than others. But what I love about the entire thing is that it captured his thoughts. And I think Rex passed away soon after this book. And yet this book, still lives on because he put it all down. And it would never have happened if it hadn't been for the digital world. So the digital world is phenomenal in what it provides. But, again, I prefer books that are edited So I would love the fact that every kind of typo is fixed, every syntax is correct, and like everything to be flow and make sense. I just want all that, but you can't always get it all. And if by the time they invest in that, you need to sell, 1,500 of these just to pay your editing fee. So to me, there's value in both sides of this plate. When they do studies, there's benefits to print, and this I stole this off the internet.
Chris from Wikipedia.
This is from Wikipedia. But people like, as we've already discussed it, people like print media in the sense that you actually have something tangible in your hand. They become connected to it. They don't get interrupted by all the advertisements. There's just a variety of things they put down on here.
Let me interrupt you for a second. Endemic advertising that is part of your subject matter is viewed by readers as editorial. When you flip through our magazine and you see cars for sale and auction, that becomes editorial to you. If it's armored Suburbans or German Shepherd guard dogs, then it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But I'm just saying that
if it's related, makes sense.
Then you enjoy reading the ads as much as you do reading the editorial.
But I don't want that ad to pop up in my face, though. If I'm in the middle of a sentence and it pops up, and that's what happens to me on a lot of sites, and it drives me bonkers.
Yeah.
And so, but if it's there next to the article, I have no problem. It all makes sense.
A magazine and a book are the ultimate print-on-demand vehicle because you can turn to the page that you want to go to. You can skip past the ads you don't want to look at, but you have control over the experience, and that's not always true in the digital situation.
Exactly true. Exactly true. The other thing is print, and the disadvantages to print are things like the fact you can't do a search as easily. If you want to find that, where's that thing where he mentions the blah, blah, blah? Well, you can't find it until you go through and look for that folded over corner that you did.
Right, I'm going to say we are about a month away from releasing something that's been a 30-year project of mine, where we've digitized every single copy of the magazine, and we have our 400,000 records in our database. And we're going to be able to have a global search. So you go into our website, you type in chassis 4161, and every single time that chassis number has appeared in an article, and it will pop up with a listing and a link to it.
That is a wonderful application.
It's 30 years it's taken me.
Oh, yeah. That is, to me, that's a beautiful benefit of digital, because you just don't get that. When I look at all my road and tracks on the shelf, my car and drivers on the shelf, my sports car markets on the shelf, which one has it? I have to go back and guess it and find it.
Road and Track and Car and Driver didn't digitize anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they just did, and they didn't care.
Yeah.
So you can't search their archives.
Right. However, I will give Road and Track credit for one thing. They just did a phenomenal job on their September and August. Is that what it is here? August, September issue.
That's called a premium double issue.
Oh, baby.
I'm just letting you know that.
Yes, but it has that really nice article for everybody who's watching and everybody who's here, all about the Alfetta 158. And they put it on the cover because, hey, what was the first cover of the very first Road and Track? Well, it was an Alfetta 158 racing. So, hey, I'll give them credit for that. They won me back over for that. So, we've kind of bounced about a few fun things, aspects of the print world. I mean, there's other aspects of digital that are phenomenal. Like, I've always printed up route guides for our drives that I lead. And it's really fun to be able to give turn-by-turn instructions, pictures of the intersections where they have to turn. This is all really cool. And I like these things, except the only thing better is when you actually can just look at your phone and you have an exact route guide built into your phone that talks to you in a nice, pleasant voice. So these are great. They can give you all sorts of info, but that phone, oh man, it's hard to beat that phone when that thing's GPS is telling you, no, Fred boy, you need to turn back there, and tells you to turn around. I love it.
Let me ask the group here. We are just engaging with Ralista, so that for our 2 tours this summer, they will put turn by turn onto phones.
Yep.
Do you think it's necessary to still have a route book as well as turn by turn on your phone?
Show of hands. How many people want a route book and turn by turns? I see a few. So So Nora, why don't we grab the microphone here, and then let's actually get some feedback from people. So I got a follow-up question on that.
Because that's digital and print, right? You've got turn by turn is digital and route book is
It's
print.
print. And so I know like in the turn by turns I give, I do the one side of the page is all the turn by turn instructions with the pictures of the intersections. But the other side of the page is everything you're driving past. It's whatever significant landforms, history you can imagine. So that's what I like about turn by turns. But everybody has to put their hands up. I want you guys to give us an answer. What do you like about the written turn by turn instructions? What do you like about those? So show of hands again, who like those. There's a guy back there in the back. I don't like him very much, but I like his hand. So Mr. Doug Zates, answer this. What do you like about print books?
Sort your left-hand side of the route booklet with all the miscellaneous information. If you have a co-driver or passenger, they can read out loud what's going on, what you're seeing, and all the untold facts and information. You know, you're given the regular route. I like to write tours as well for our Alpha Club, and I like to do just that very thing.
So the little white house on the left-hand side, halfway down the block, was where Doug Zates was born and raised, and where he lost his first bicycle to the neighbor kid. Now that's a whole nother story. But yeah, all right. Anybody else want to share what they like about the print books, print media? Oh, we have one right here too.
The battery doesn't go.
Oops, we gotta wait for the microphone here. So.
Well, the battery doesn't go dead on a piece of paper.
Yeah, it's true. They work pretty well.
Cell service can be iffy in some places, down in the canyon and stuff.
Yeah, the nice thing, a lot of the phones, even if you lose cell service, the GPS location in your phone should work. So Raulista, for example, will keep track of your car, even if it loses cell signal, because it's the GPS in the phone is going on. I still know where I am. Now, it may miss a couple of key points every once in a while, but for the most part, they still are supposed to function, at least going forward, they better function.
Well, Fred, the way that works, because I do a lot of off-roading with my Rover, and you can download programs there. You always have a GPS signal.
Mhm.
Any place on the planet, you have a GPS signal. What you don't have is the map. And so you download the map separately. That's what you lose when you lose cell service, is you lose the route and the map. You don't lose your actual location.
But if it's already on your phone,
Then
the phone, it's already there. It's just if you started it in no cell service, you're not going to find it.
That's right.
But once you have it initially to start the drive, you can go through all sorts of zones that don't have it. Just don't shut that thing off if you're in the middle of nowhere, because it doesn't find you again. So any other thoughts? Anybody else want to share another comment on that? So, we have some guy up here in the front. Mr. Chris Bright, yay!
Yeah, I'm going to argue the digital side because, and Keith and I were talking about this on the drive up, which is print versions are great when you have a co-driver. Digital allows you to have solo participants in rallies and tours that sometimes you don't always have a partner that wants to come along with you or whatever. So I really like having the ability to allow someone to have to participate if no one likes them in the world. Like Fred, this would allow you to have so many more rallies that you can go on.
I can have more friends.
You can have some friends.
I can have some friends. You can have my second friend. What's
But
funny?
I also think, like I said, people are used, I mean, we are surveying our participants coming to our tours. They're used to living by turn by turn.
Yeah.
And they don't want to know about the White House where Doug's Alfas van is stored. They just want to drive. It says turn right in 3/4 of a mile.
Yep.
I mean, and they don't want to miss a turn.
And that works great, especially on the online versions. It coaches them only on the route, where they're going.
And Fred, there are some vehicles where the print book just doesn't work.
You mean like a convertible that's loud?
Like if you're driving a Caterham.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or a car with a European odometer that's never been corrected anyway.
Yeah, and I do motorcycle and scooter rallies as well.
Yeah.
And to have the phone Bluetooth to your helmet
Yeah.
and get voice command.
Is that a program that makes that?
No, that's just me.
Oh, just you? Okay. There's a business for you there.
There you go. There you go. You ought to see the ones this is the run of the mill. Oh, I've done some fancy ones too. Oh, baby. They're all fancy bound and everything. So I think we had another question over here on this side.
this is not with your wonderful little books and your.
They are wonderful, by the way. Thank you very much.
Or your, whatever the GPS system, but with my good old fashioned GPS, I was going to a car show in Montana, had my buddy with me. She kept saying, no, I don't like GPS. I want to use a map. I said, no, GPS is great. This is, 5-7 years ago.
Yeah.
My GPS went completely haywire. It had us in the wrong state. It was trying to direct us backwards. Everything, I don't know what it was doing. I then retired. I didn't want to do anything. But I was trying to convince this woman on the joys and the wonders of GPS, and it was trying to send us to the wrong state. So they do go nutty.
They can sometimes go awry.
Yeah, they also tell you after you missed the turn right, and that was a mile back. So
Yeah.
I think having both is the way.
Nice. I will vouch for the fact that I once drove across this country many years ago using a Garmin, and I have no idea how, but I accidentally changed it to French language. And I'm listening to this lady yelling at me in French, and I'm like, I was so mad, I was going to throw that thing out because she kept telling me I was doing something wrong in French.
It's pretty bad French too.
Yes, and they don't go out of their way to be friendly. That's the fact. Yeah. But it turned out it wasn't her fault. It actually turned out to be the operator. But anyway, so there's benefits to both digital and print, but clearly there's areas that really they're not there. The print version has to be there for some things. Digital has to be there for others. So if I want to look up the number of how many times that Alfa Romeo won the Indianapolis 500, I'm going to go online and look that up. I'm not going to waste my time trying to find a book to look. Now, once I find that answer, now I'm going to open up the book to look at those specific races and say, oh, look at this. And then you realize that there haven't been a whole lot of victories by Alfa Romeo at the Indy 500, but by God, there's been a good one for
I bet I can find you a Wikipedia entry.
Yes, I did. Yeah, it shows it won. In fact, won a couple.
I want to say we've sold our library at SCM, and we did it partly because when the COVID came, we went virtual. We reduced our office space. We had 13,000 square feet, and we reduced it to 1,300 square feet.
Wow, big change.
Everybody, and our rent went down the same amount. But we had this whole room that was our books, and we thought we almost never use these books. But because we use experts to start with, and then we vet the things that those experts say, we were okay selling those books. We simply didn't have the space to keep them all, and we didn't use them enough to justify renting another office just to keep the books there.
Well, then when you go to sell something like that, what's one of the joys of the digital world is there are digital tools out there to be able to spread the news out that these are available. And so just like you have a physical store that people will be able to visit, huge portion of your audience is going to be outside.
Yeah, our preference is that people would come online.
Yeah.
From all over the world.
Yep.
Because that's where our market really is. Having a storefront and expecting enough people to come into them to buy specialty books is not a viable business plan.
Yeah. Well, and to me, that's a perfect marriage of the digital and the physical world. When you say, all right, I've got the physical books, you can now find me because here I am on this digital platform. And you've got an industry. Mr. Chris Brightinson over here has gone ahead and started up a business. It's online as well, but it's very specialized. So it's not printing, but print books can be sold on your tool. So I like it. So
I can say one more thing here about print versus digital. We are $88 a year for a print subscription. I have tried my damnedest to get people to switch to a digital subscription because our costs are much lower when we're doing that. And I've gone down as far as $29 a year. I can't get people to they would rather pay $88 and get print than pay $29 and get digital. And that's just the people who use digital the most are frequent travelers who like to read the magazine on their iPad. But it's just been interesting. The cost is not as important as the medium that the information is delivered in.
Right. Well, and I, as a former editor of the local club's Alpha newsletter, I spent many years putting this thing together, but I kept thinking, there's got to be another way to do this. And we've looked at the concept of just moving this thing to be completely digital. So we never got completely digital. We now offer a digital version of it and we offer a print version of it.
And tell us the number, you told me the numbers relative.
So we have around 400 people that read it digitally or that receive it digitally. And we have about 80 that get mailed out.
Do they pay more to get the mailed version?
Nope, it's the same price either way. It's just a preference, whatever the person wants. And we also notice that around 20 of those people get both the digital and the print, because the people like me, I want the digital version. It arrives tomorrow. I get it and I can look at it. And then I have the physical one I can actually hold in my hand when I'm sitting around reading. And
So let me
I like
ask
them both.
Chris and Doug from the Alpha in Oregon, we no longer do a print version of the newsletter, right?
No, we don't. It's all digital.
And how long ago was that done?
2012.
And what was the pushback, or what was the reaction to being digital only?
I think once we had a large change in the quality and the quantity of the magazine when we went digital. We were no longer faced with the postage, so we saw maybe a doubling in the number of pages, more content.
Right.
And so people accepted that. I was a naysayer because I still like the paper, but we don't offer a print version. If you want to print it, go to the website, download it, and print it away.
I mean, we find that same challenge with ours is that if you limit it, the content, the article size, everything to the size of the print, well, that limits your articles. And so we have to face that choice at times, but we'll transition beyond that someday. The idea might be that we'll do an expanded version digitally and do an abbreviated version print. That's the compromise that we see going ahead. So
I would say you're making a lot of extra work for yourself.
yeah, but luckily I'm making it for the editor.
But it's your club.
Yeah, it's my editor. We'll put him to work. Don't tell my editor I've set him up for this, but.
But I think eventually people will get used to a pure digital version, because especially for club newsletters, because that's the way the world is going. And your volunteers, everybody's time is stretched. And so that's what I'm predicting here.
You know, and our excuse to keep going with the print version is, well, not only do they want it, but we want to be able to hand it out when we're at events, we're at a dealership, whatever. Somebody buys a new Alfa Romeo, I want to run over there and hand them one of these and say, you should join the club. But I don't have to do this. I could do something else.
Well, what we used to do with the Alpha Club, remember we had little butt slips like this under the windshield wipers?
Yep.
And when I ran the Ron Tonkin Ferrari Alpha store, I bought every Alpha. Anybody who bought an Alpha, I bought them a membership.
Oh, bless you.
Which my boss, Ron Tonkin, he refused to reimburse me even part of it. He said, why am I spending money on these people? They already bought a car.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you, having something to give people of any kind is really important.
Yep, very, very cool. So let's see what else. So other than DIY videos, honestly, those DIY videos, it's so funny. It's a digital side. So instead of turning to a manual or a book, the first thing I do is look for even the ones that I'm obviously know. I mean, I know how to change a battery, but I go, look, I just go, is there something new I should know? So I do like the digital side from this aspect. Going back to older cars, I don't feel as nervous about an older car changing its battery without, I don't need to look it up. But there is things like that that are important.
There's a divide there.
Yeah.
So simple stuff, changing the oil, changing the battery, filling up the other fluids. Video is good for that. YouTube is good for that. But if you want to do something, more serious, like you need to adjust the clutch linkage on your car or whatever, you're going to want the book with the specs right there. You're not going to want to keep replaying video over and over again, especially when you're under the car. You're going to want the book right there. So you've got the numbers when you're making the adjustments. And so there is space for both, but the more detail that you need the book.
Exactly. Nope, I love it. I love that. I know also another key value I found with print materials. When I worked at Microsoft, I was in the gaming division, and we were trying to make sure a car was accurate to exactly how it was raced in 1971 at this race late in the season where it won that race. Well, the problem is that you go online and do a search on that car, there's all sorts of weird info, but it doesn't necessarily buttonhole down tight to that race. And you might find a little tiny sentence or two about that race. But instead, if you walk over to the shelf and you find the 1971 magazine, now the race was in June, so you don't find the June issue, you don't find the July issue, you don't even find the August issue, but you find that September issue.
Right.
And guess what? There's that coverage of that race, and in it, there's a lot of specifics. And so then you can find it, but you can't do a search online. Like you mentioned, Road and Track doesn't have that up there for you to search digitally.
And the reason there was so much information was because
Was
there was no internet.
Right, there was
Then you would wait for
That was the
3
weird
months and there would be
Yeah.
page after page written by really smart people and great photos.
Yeah. So to me, that's a great resource. I want to be able to capture that, which means I want that physical article, or I either want it in the magazine or I want it scanned somehow, because that is captured back then. Nowadays, we watch the race. There's a race going on right now while we're all sitting here. There's the 24 hours of Daytona that hopefully is on your DVR like it is on mine. But the idea is we can see it today, and so many tools online and on TV. But you're absolutely right. It was not online and on TV as easily back then. So yes, to me, that's where the print has value. But to a collector, is there any collector value to old magazines or old books or old whatever? Does anybody have a story on collector value?
I'll say one quick thing. Before the internet, old magazines had value.
Yeah.
But now with eBay, people, if they want to buy a whole collection of Sports Car Market, if they want to, they can find that stuff pretty easily. And before you had to go to a bookseller to swap it.
I got that really cool magazine from the Seattle World's Fair in 1962. It's a Life magazine where we're on the cover. It's
You're
of
on the
no
cover?
value. No,
Oh,
the Seattle is.
Oh.
But of course, the problem is that it's of no value. I think it's cool because it's just like new.
Then it makes you happy to have it.
It's of no value.
Yeah, there's no commercial value to the old magazines because of eBay,
Yeah,
but they're still out there and you're able to find them,
yeah.
which is good. So you can still retrieve that information.
What about books?
Watching that race 5 years from now, when you go to restore one of the cars that ran in that race, how
Yeah.
useful is that going to be?
Yeah, because the
It's
new
gonna-
magazine doesn't cover it.
Yeah, it's going to show you the decals, but it's not going to.
And only from one side.
Yeah.
I want to see all sides. It is funny. I mean, well, examples, you're doing research on Bruce McLaren racing, and you want to get the decals right on the car. You mentioned decals. You're trying to get the decals exactly right. But every single picture you see, the decals are different. And you're like, wait, what's going wrong here? Well, then you actually talk to his daughter and you find out that, well, don't even waste your time with the magazines, because at every race, if Bruce was mad at a vendor or a supplier or a sponsor, he'd move their decal down to right behind the tire so that it would get covered with dirt and debris. So in other words, sometimes you don't get the full story in the magazine either. So that's part of the fun. But what about books? Books have gone down in value for a while. This book right up here by Simon Moore had gone up in value. I saw him as much $1,000 for the book. It's dropped back down. Now it's what, a $400 book maybe. What do we think about book values?
Books like other out-of-print books, like other collectibles, when you're talking high-end books like Simon's books, they go through cycles of interest and interest wanes. And it just like happens with, the whole car. When you look, Mopar peaked in 2015, then went down. Now it's coming back up at the auctions. So that's just part of the age cycle change in the collecting market. So collectible books will fluctuate a lot in value. The informational part of books, if that information isn't available in very many other sources, but the other sources, those books will all maintain some minimum value because there will be a need for them. And so we need to evaluate inventory from the perspective of, what information value does it have? Will it be of a need to someone, preferably within my lifetime? So I'm not paying storage on something that no one's ever going to want, or someone's only going to want it once every 20 years.
So my advice to buy high and sell low is probably not.
That's what I do with cars.
Because see, we're akin to this. That's our.
I want to ask you a commercial question. I know when they make a hardcover or publisher's edition or numbered edition that will often sell for, let's say a book is $200 and the publisher's edition is $400. And the profit margin is huge because the actual cost of the slipcover or whatever is not so.
Yeah.
So does that work as a good profit center for people? Do you think I mean, does it make a difference?
It does make a difference in profitability. And so a publisher always has to gauge how many of those they think they can sell to the people who want to have, one of only a small number versus anybody could have, one of the larger number of runs of the regular book, but still not going to be a huge run. And a book like from, let's say Dalton Watson, where they'll do a number 500 edition at the top, then behind that, there may only be 2,500 other copies. So you'll see the same book if it's about a Porsche in every Porsche home you go to, but you won't see that Porsche book on everybody's bookshelf. It won't be in an Alfa place. It won't be in a Fiat home. It won't be in a Ferrari home. So,
So Nora, do you want to steal the mic up here?
I can add a little bit.
Hold on.
From,
Let's get the mic up there close to you so that everybody online can hear you.
thanks. So the publisher's edition of my book, I think was very profitable for my publisher, which is good because it helps to offset, the risk that the publisher's taking on the regular edition of the book.
What was the premium? What was the regular price and what was the
So the
special price?
regular price is 150, and I think my publisher's edition was 350.
So an extra $200.
Right, but here's the thing. I insist on good value for money because I believe in that. So the publisher's edition was not only numbered, but there was a whole second book where I put all the supplemental material that wouldn't fit in the main book. So for the extra money, you not only got a numbered limited edition, you got a second book, and the publisher's edition was signed by Derek Bell, Brian Redmond, John Horseman, and myself. So you got what I think was good value for that extra money, which I insisted on. And I happen to know that some people have kept the publisher's edition of my book in the shrink wrap.
Yeah.
And those will appear someday because there are people speculating on these high-end books and not even taking them out of the shrink wrap to read them, which makes me sad a little bit.
Yeah, I want to see them. I want to see the signatures. I want to see that.
Did you ship the books to each one of those writers? Did you ship them a pile of books to sign, or did you have a piece
No.
of paper inserted that had their
Piece
signature?
of paper inserted. Yeah, we shipped the paper, and it was kind of expensive catching up with some of these guys, but yeah, we shipped the paper to 4 different places, got the signatures, and then paper had to go to Hungary where the book was printed.
Was it bound in?
Yeah, it was
I
bound.
see.
Well, yeah, because Dalton Watson insists that it be bound in to
Yeah.
the book. And of course, even my $150 regular edition comes in a slipcase, because that's another sort of quality thing that Dalton Watson insisted on. So the publisher's edition, of course, has to have a bigger slipcase because there's actually 2 books.
You published the books, are they published in Hungary?
Printed in Hungary.
Printed in Hungary.
Now, not all of Dalton Watson's books are printed there. Some are printed in the US. It's just when each book comes up and is ready to be printed, the publisher has to decide where is the best value and what's most appropriate for a given project.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. I like it. Well, so I want to double check, see if there's any questions on the chat room. And
We have a couple questions.
all right, why don't you share a couple of questions with us?
Absolutely. The first one is, do you have any recommended local, as in Pacific Northwest, self-publishing companies?
I do not have any local self-publishing companies offhand that I know of and think of. I will always support a self-publishing company that's out there. So if somebody has one they want to share, that's great. Do you know somebody else?
there are local consultants, and I can't think of anybody I would say specializes in automotive.
Yeah.
Why would it have to be local?
Yeah, so the nice thing is that since those companies typically do everything online, they could produce it and they might be a half a planet away and ship it back to you. So I guess local isn't required, but it just might be a comfort zone for somebody.
Well, I know people who've self-published with mentorship from one of these type of consultants. And so some people might want somebody local so they can talk to somebody face to face, so that they have somebody there, who can give them a pep talk when they're
Yeah.
You know, they're hitting a struggling part. So I can see for wanting to do that. I mean, I wanted my software team to all be in the same time zone.
Yep, makes sense. So, fair enough. Another question?
Yes, the other question was, since Wikipedia is open source, Fred, have you ever edited any of the errors that you've read on the Alpha?
That is a great question. Why, yes, I have. Not only on that Alpha, but on a couple other things I've edited it. And the problem is that who's Fred Russell? So that I can put it, I can go in there and correct it. And then I get an email back from Wikipedia, you know, within a day or two, or a comment back that says, you want to give us some credentials here that help validate your words? And I go, I'm looking at the car. I can just tell you, I talked to all the mechanics. There's no way that it would function. And then if you read a number of books, but I don't have those books in front of me. I'm just pulling it from my head because I've just known it. It's so obvious. I've had the same challenge with, there's a boat I used to own years back, or have for 5 years. And that boat's webpage has a bunch of inaccuracies. Well, I can go in there and correct them. And then because I'm nobody, they go, oh, whatever. They just eventually, those go away because somebody with credentials said it was goofy and they kept it.
So Fred, the ideal place for you without credentials is on Bring a Trailer as a troll.
Oh, yeah. Bring a Trailer, phenomenal for that. I love it. Good point. Good point. So, all right, I'm going to update my resume. I'm going on there. So, yep, that's very good. Great question. I'm just sorry that my answer was that. So, so as we wrap this up, I just want to see if there's any other thoughts or questions from the audience. If you guys do have them, raise a hand, and we'll have Nora, who's doing a great job of running around with the mic. Any other thoughts? Any questions?
I've got one last thing to say.
Oh,
The value
have a
of
mic.
a magazine is that we are rigid in our format, so that every month when you get the magazine, you know there's this column and that column and then this, and that's like having a dog that shows up with the same color bow.
Yeah.
You know, but it's really important. When you're on the web, you have no control over the order in which things come at you.
Sometimes even when they show up.
Yeah.
Yep.
But at least with a publication, for my taste, I can manage your journey through the information.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that. It is to me, my comfort zone is definitely the books, the printed matter, the magazines, all the stuff I can actually hold in my hand. But I can guarantee I'm also completely subservient to online resources as well. What I was going to mention about Turn 10 Studios, for example, when I was there, we would always have to go online and look for information to try to research something and validate a card, make it correct. And I could find inaccuracies on so many things, not just the Alfas, but on a lot of cards. And so you want to dig deeper than what the internet can give you. The internet will give you this much, but there's so much more that if you really want to know something, I really cannot imagine beating this book or that book or that book. There's just so much more content.
If you know the author and the editor, if you can trust the people who've made it.
Yeah. There's a book out there. If you ever get a chance to pick up a book called The Hero and the Heroine, you'll see a picture on the back cover of the author and he's standing next to me. Do not read that book. It is a horrible book. The guy mentions me in the book, puts a picture of me on the back, and I still couldn't read the book. So put that on the microphone. Hero and the Heroine, do not buy that book. It's just so hard to read. It was self-published. So books in general, and especially like he says, if you know the publisher, you know the author, they are a phenomenal resource for us. And I don't think they'll go away, even if they change the medium as to how you read it. You know, the Kindle is a phenomenal thing because it's easier on your eyes.
Well, 5 years ago, everybody thought service manuals were going to be replaced by CDs.
Yeah.
Okay. I have 4 devices now that do not have CD players.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and
True. The media changes.
And one of the biggest publishers in the aftermarket for those manuals on CDs, they've actually discontinued the CDs and brought back some of their print books.
Yeah. This book did not come out as a book. This book came out as a beautiful CD that has so much beautiful content. And it was so cool when it came out. And it was expensive too, man. Then after a while, they realized they better put out a book. And then they came out with this really cool book. Of course, I had to buy both because I was an idiot, but I love this. It's great info. But absolutely right. The concepts that we have, though, this is the tool. This is the tool. Well, it's not always the tool. It changes.
So I have a 2013 Fiat. The only service manuals for that from Mopar are on a CD.
Yeah, that's no fun.
You know, the only other thing that's available I can get from Europe, there were aftermarket manuals that were published that are still available.
So, well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you very much to Keith for being here today. Keith Martin, everybody, is just phenomenal. There's a couple of these hanging around up here. If you don't have your hands on a sports car market, go ahead and grab one. They're available in a variety of places. Nothing else, go to the website and find out where they can find them. But
We when there were a lot of shows, we would give these away at shows, and I once had a gentleman come to me and he'd made a T-shirt up that said "Sports Car Market Mooch of the Year," and he listed every event he'd gone to get a free issue.
Oh, my God.
All over the world.
wow, I like it.
So if we want to start this up here, you could say, you can become the apprentice Mooch of the Year.
Yeah.
Starting with LeMay Museum
It's a
today.
training program starting today. I like it. There are a couple of magazines available up here, so help yourself, you guys. Anybody online, just go ahead and look up Sports Car Market, go down to your local store, find them. Thank you also to Alex for coming down here. And Alex, you need to make sure that when Ethel's Garage is open for business, that we all get a chance to bug you, come by, buy something.
Everybody will know I will be hosting an Alpha Club meeting, of course, and other car clubs up there as well. Ethel's with a Y, Ethel's Garage, right now, just on Facebook and on YouTube. We hope to be getting first parts of the website launched probably in March. But stay tuned, particularly if you like and subscribe our Facebook page and our YouTube page, you will get updates every week. I'm trying to post a new video every week of progress as we get going along.
Nice. So thank you, everybody. Our next talk is a very targeted talk. It's a very fun talk because mid-March is our next Alfas Can Talk gathering. March is Women's History Month. So the featured topic is women racers throughout history. So we're going to have a couple of phenomenal speakers that time that will be that have a strong history. For example, people like Lynn St. James. There's a rally driver who's going to be possibly part of this. We're going to have a variety of people who will be speaking. Oh, including a person who was drove in the movie industries as a stunt driver. And so it's going to be great. But there's so many women in history that never got the credit for how great they were as racers because they were racing in a man's sport. And how fun would it be to tout how great this woman was when, gosh, she may compete against me one day. So it's really fun to be able to brag about them. This is very, very cool to be able to bring this up. So we'll be spending at least an hour, maybe even two, chatting about it. And that's in mid-March. So thank you all for being here today. I look forward to seeing everybody in mid-March. All right, enjoy.